I'm recording on this computer. Okay. Morning, Perry.
Morning, Graham.
For those who don't know who this is Perry McCarthy, the original Stig from Top Gear. Perry, let's kick off with this interview. Just give me a brief history of your driving career.
Brief history.
I know it's a big one, but
I never followed motor racing. When I got to college, I started because a friend of mine was really a big fan, and I started drawing Formula One cars because I was studying art amongst a few other things. And I really got into the sport. Really enjoyed reading about the drivers, and at the same time, I just started driving on the road, which wasn't everybody's cup of tea, to be quite frank. But these two things had happened. I really enjoyed my driving very much indeed. And then a couple of fluke things happened, and a power mind had actually set it up that the chief instructor at Brands Hatch come out to meet me because word about my driving was kind of getting around a bit. He turned up at this music shop where I was demonstrating some pianos and said, I want you to come with me. I've heard about driving, basically. So we went to Brands Hatch. I took him around, messed up considerably, thinking I was Jack the Lad. Just didn't get it quick, but not good. Yeah. He was about 60 at the time, Graham, and he and was fantastic. Just showed me exactly how it should be done. The only thing is I did kind of learn quickly. So I got back in and then just absolutely blatted it, but did it well. And it was right there and then that Les said he felt that I was the best he'd ever seen.
Wow.
And which was pretty good because I wanted to have something to do because I was pretty crap at everything else, So that was it. The decision was made to say, right, I want to be a racing driver. He said, I've got to be a racing driver. But then I found out that it takes money, a lot of money. So I went to work on North Sea oil rigs for the next 2 years or so to get the money together to start. So then I came straight into Formula Ford. Against a lot of people with their karting backgrounds, international karting, UK karting, etc. And Formula Ford is single-seaters, looks like a Formula One car, but much smaller, but with no wings back then, etc. The ideal way to start is how, what Ayrton started in karting, but then Senna came into Formula Ford. It's the proven pathway, really. And I kicked off and very, very quick, but didn't know what I was doing. Race strategy was zero.
Yeah.
To keep it on the track was pretty much zero. But I set 3 poles out of 6 races. And then the following year, got my act together a bit more, started thinking a bit more, won the British Championship. And then a year out after a big crash, and then came back, Formula 3, against Damon Hill, Johnny Herbert, Mark Blundell. There's a whole bunch of us that came through.
Still your mates, sorry, Perry, but still your mates today. Yeah.
Big mates. Yeah. And then after that, it was International Formula 3000. So that was the level just below Formula One. And then finally getting into Formula One with a really small team called Andrea Moda, which was a disaster.
Do you want to relive this experience?
It was a disaster. There's one thing I'm thankful for about that experience is that I'm actually sitting here talking to you today, because that could have ended badly. They were. Yeah.
Do you want to tell people about this near fatal experience with them?
Yeah, well, there was the biggest example of that with them was in qualifying for the Belgian Grand Prix. And I went into what's called Eau Rouge, which is a really, it's a big boy corner. Well, it certainly was back then. Yeah, absolutely flat out. And you're slightly left, a compression, and you've got to get it right, then going up a hill, and then a kink on the left and on the exit. And turning in at about, I think it was about 180, 185, the steering jammed. Anyway, cut a long story short, I felt it immediately, jammed the brakes on, and still only just made the corner because of the tightening. And I suddenly thought, okay, the steering rack's flexing. So what that means is that even with our piece of rubbish, there was aerodynamic download. Yeah. And the download had pushed, but it flexed the steering rack. And if you flex the steering rack, you can't have the steering arm go in. That's why it seized. I was very lucky. I did everything right, but I was also blimmin' lucky on that. Yeah. And when I came in, I found out that they knew the steering rack was flexing. So then you go, well, this isn't proper Formula One team. That was it. So it's the F1 dream was left in tatters.
Yeah.
So cut a long story short, I then came back into what's called sports cars, signed for Lotus, and then Chrysler, and then Panos, and ended up with Audi, which is, if you're not in Formula One, you want to be riding for Audi. Sorry, that did skip being in America for 2 years, where things went very well for me. So that was great. So yeah, I've been around the block a bit, Graham, as you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm after reading your book, Flat Out, Flat Broke, as well, which is a great read. I've got to give that a plug, Perry, because it is a great read. If you're on a beach, which none of us are at the moment, but if you've got nothing to do on COVID, get Perry's book, because it will entertain you for a few hours, without a doubt. It brings the guy's character.
Unless you can get it actually, download it on Kindle, but you can't get any new copies anymore. We've stopped the run on that, but the Kindle thing's there. So hopefully people will have a laugh with it, but it shows you the behind the scenes stuff, because that was a brief summary. The main thing about the career is being a racing driver is organising the funding and being with the right team and trying to desperately get those opportunities that if you feel you're pretty good to be able to show it, you know.
So let's just fast forward. How did you end up on Top Gear then?
Well, it was actually the book, to be quite honest, because it's the book encapsulated, you know, all the ups and downs trying to get to Formula One. And we had a great book launch party in London. A lot of friends from Formula One there, a lot of friends from TV, including Jeremy Clarkson, and his series producer, which was Andy Willman. And they were both there. And it was actually at the book launch that Jem said, hey, listen, Top Gear's been off air for quite a long time. We're bringing it back and we've got an idea for you. I said, oh, yeah. So he said, yeah. He said, we want you to be this secret racing driver. And back then, as you know, the original Stig, me, was dressed in black.
Yeah.
So it was all black. So he said, we're going to have you dressed in black boots, black overalls, black gloves, black crash helmet, a black visor, and we're going to call you the Gimp.
The Gimp.
I said, no, you're not. No, you're not. And they were really serious. I said, no, I'm not being called the Gimp. Anyway, it went backward and forward a bit, and finally we settled on the Stig.
Okay.
So, and that's how, and of course, none of us had any idea how big Top Gear would become and how well-known Stig had become. So it was a bit of fun.
Yeah, no, excellent. And you know, there's been many Stigs since you decided to fly off the end of the Arc Royal. You know,
there's only been one more colour Stig, if you like, that a few people have played him, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to bring, because you know, a lot of the people who follow me are into driving, and so I just want to ask you, what are your main strengths? I think I've got a flavour of it now, but what would you consider your main strengths as a driver?
Well, as a road driver or racing driver?
Well,
there's a bit of crossover actually.
Well, let's do a bit of both, Perry. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got some attributes, and one of them is the ability to concentrate. So I think that's relevant in both motor racing and road driving. I think that's the biggest frustration that I see, is that you just see people who think they're in their lounge and that the car's going to get there automatically. You know, you got to concentrate. You got to be thinking, as you very well know, and that's the biggest thing, you know. So with motor racing, you do need some level of bravery, you do, but what you've got to have around it is judgment.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to talk about bravery on track and then using that on the road, because those two shouldn't go hand in hand. But judgment should. And again, judgment is a condition of concentrating. You know, it's like, you know, you'd probably say something different to this, but if I had one message to get out, to get out there, one message, I'd say, drivers, look that way. Yeah. You know, not with your pals, not looking down there, not texting, or even on Facebook or something like that, which is insane.
I know, but people do.
I know.
It's
incredible.
I know. And this is a guy who knows how to crash properly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, that's an expertise of mine. Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I used to be 6'2" before the crashes.
Yeah. So that is the skill of what I call relaxed focus is a skill that takes time to develop. And a lot of the people that I work with are training inexperienced drivers who model their driving on other people, their parents, their mates. And I suppose if someone wanted to, and I don't know how, and I'm just asking this off the top of my head, because there's a lot of boys out there. I was one of them. Too much testosterone, did some silly things when I was learning to drive, and real silly things. I'm sure, as young men, a lot of us have. But if they wanted to get into maybe letting that go on a track, where would you advise them to go and start now? Have you got any thoughts? Because there'll be some people that will go, I'd like to advise, I've got this young boy I'm training to drive. He's a complete hothead. I don't want him doing it on the road, but I don't know how to advise him where to go and develop that skill, shall we say.
Well, I don't really know what to say on that one, because
Okay.
the easiest entry cost racing really is karting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of circuits where you can arrive and drive. So you spend, I don't know, 20 quid, 25 quid, whatever, for an hour, and you go out and kart. But there's not an awful lot of similarity between a kart and a road car.
Yeah.
So it may be instilling a bit of false confidence there.
Yeah.
Because you're in a car and all you want to do is go faster and faster. And being harsh with a car is okay, you won't get that lap time, but you don't, it's not as translatable as being harsh with a road car, So you would say, for the value of what your question's about, is that you'd want them in a road car to go on a track. But that all starts getting blimmin' expensive.
Yeah. And also, I think the other thing is, and I know this, we breed overconfidence as well, And then if they go in the road car on a track, they then go, oh, I can do it around that roundabout.
Well, do you know something though? Is that you've hit on a point there, because again, it would only be valuable on the track if you or somebody else was sitting next to them.
Yes.
Because they might then just go, well, now I'm on a track and now I can completely fling it around the door. I mean, honest to God, I'm not being judgmental here, because that's exactly how I kicked off. I didn't, I was quick, but I didn't have a clue,
Yeah.
So it was only because I had somebody who was an instructor with me just saying, hey, listen, you've got all the qualities, now take out some of the bad bits.
Yeah.
And I think really, even in motor racing, that's what I try to do. Clearly things are happening at immensely high speed, but I know most of the time I've done something wrong, And so what I'm trying to do every lap is to refine my approach, and as a career overall, is to refine my approach and just go, okay, look, I'm not trying to be the next big thing with this step change, but what am I doing wrong? And if you can cover that, you get better anyway.
Yeah.
And with a road car, I've actually always kind of had a bit of a smile on my face if somebody has said, not necessarily, oh, Perry, can't believe how fast you took that or whatever, but what I kind of like is to say, crikey, you braked, changed down, turned in, and went through it, and it seemed seamless,
I could just say I remember sitting next to you in your Porsche, and we had a little drive to the shops and back, shall we say?
Yeah. So it's I think it's concentrating on all the little bits on how to put them together, and that's only on how you drive. Then of course there's the entire game on the road about predictability. You're trying to work out who's going to do what, and it's like a chess game, and it kind of actually interests me. And it, believe it or not, it's actually like aerodynamics, because it is fluid dynamics. So who's going to do something? If somebody stops there, it's going to compress the traffic there. Somebody is going to make a decision to do this or that. Excuse me a second. Can I just take this a second?
I'd go for it, yeah.
Goedemorgen, Alad. Ja, alles goed. Hoe gaat het met jou? Goed? Okay, Allard, I'm in an interview at the moment. I'll call you back in 20 minutes. That's great. Dank u wel. Okay, tot ziens. Dank u wel. Ciao.
So we've just discovered.
You need that energy. It's sorry. It's a Dutch commentator, Formula One commentator.
Okay.
And yeah, so what was he saying? He's also crazy as a bunch of lights, that guy. He used to drive as well, and he was nuts, you know. So it's at the timing.
Yeah.
It's about trying to put that together, but it's about seeing what's going on. And that fluid dynamics thing that I was just touching on, it's just when you're concentrating, you can predict something. So you're limiting risk. If you're not concentrating, then it's all happening to you and you're playing catch up. And you go, well, how did that happen? Now, clearly, of course, there are some just surprises on the road that you can't, predict.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's when concentration and hopefully reactions, even though I wouldn't normally say people need to drive on reactions because that's wrong.
Yeah. Proactive driver rather than a reactive driver.
Happens, yeah. When something really bad happens, though, it's as well to have those reactions, and your reactions will be better if you've already concentrating and ready for stuff, you know?
Okay.
So we used to have this expression on the oil rigs. It was like living in a state of constant unease. And that's how you should live. You know, you don't want to give yourself a heart attack, but you should be aware that if anything's wrong, look at it, take notice of it, because you are working on a grenade out there. So, and it's exactly how it should be with driving. You shouldn't be completely relaxed. There should be a little bit of unease of just going, what's happening over there? What's happening over there?
Yeah, I always drive as though everyone's trying to kill me. That's the way. That's my mindset. I'm going to go out there. I always think, well, everyone's going to try and kill me. I'm just going to do my best to stop this happening. Yeah. And
I can see why they're trying.
Yeah, no, I know, mate. I know. But I just want to change the subject actually, and I don't care who of your mates you upset. But I want to ask, from a racing point of view, who are your heroes?
Well, I mean, crikey, that's a difficult one. Heroes, you come into people like Senna.
Yeah.
People who's driving you really, really admire Hamilton.
Okay.
I mean, he's the guy's a genius. He is absolutely brilliant. He really is. But there's been a whole host of characters that I've really adored over the years. I mean, when I first kicked off, it was people like Alan Jones, the Australian F1 champion, and Keke Rosberg. They were the people that I thought, wow, they're real jack the lads. They can really fling the car around, and they're so cool. And Gilles Villeneuve, of course. And I never met Gilles, but I went on to know both Alan and Keke, and that was a real thrill for me.
Wow.
And James Hunt as well, of course.
Yeah.
So, but you see personality shine through sometimes in the cars, their approach.
Yeah.
Levels of aggression or levels of thoughtfulness. You had something like Niki Lauda or Alain Prost, and they were very, very bright people. Almost engineers at the same time. And in fact, they were engineers. They could really work out what's going on. But then you had maybe the more cavalier spirit of somebody like James or Keke Rosberg or Nelson Piquet was a brilliant driver, 3-time world champion. There's a whole host of people.
Okay, I'm going to get near the end of this interview, so I've got a couple more questions because I know your time's short. You've got to get back to this guy. But you got back on the track last year in some way. I remember seeing some pictures and that. Do you just tell us a little bit about that? Is that going to happen again in the future, or is that a bit of a one-off?
It's really interesting you should mention that, because you're somebody who believes we never stop learning, and so am I. And I was invited to come back after, crikey, a 17-year layoff, I think it was. So, okay, let's do it. But it was something completely different. It was the European Rallycross Championship, the Titans RX Championship. Now, of course, these things are running turbos and they're 4-wheel drive. And of course, rallycross means that you're half on tarmac, but then you go on to gravel.
Well, I know you're on my local track, weren't you? Liddon Hill. Did you go?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That was my first race.
Yeah.
So I'm against the guy who won the world championship in rallycross, the guy who came second in the world. So it was an all-star cast. And the funny thing is, I actually led both my first 2 races, but there was no talent there. It was an absolute fluke that I absolutely got a brilliant start. And then, of course, over the next 5 laps, they ate me alive.
Yeah.
But there was a real difference in driving the 4-wheel drive and how you turn in and how you slide it. Because sure, driving in the rain, in motor racing, etc., I was very, very good in the rain for some reason. I have no idea why. But, you know, you drift the car, bit of opposite lock, balancing the throttle, all these sorts of things. Your feet are going like this and everything else. With the 4-wheel drive, totally different thing. You know, you have to like turn in even more and floor it to try and pull yourself out of it. And getting that through my head sometimes, I mean, the other guys, the real good guys, were actually coming and teaching me to just say, you know, because mainly they were from Scandinavia, and so they speak like this. Everybody says, give me back, and then, you know. So they're coming, stay flat, on that flat, though, stay flat. I can do the accent more than the driving. But I did actually start getting the hang of it, and I really had a great time. Will I be coming back this year? Well, obviously with the virus and everything, doubt it. Yeah. Next year, I don't know, to be quite honest, Graham. I've got a fairly serious business that going somewhere big time next year. I don't think I'm going to have any time. But the passion's still there.
Because I just like, you know, I was just thinking, I'd love to come and watch you again, you know. So that's all. I was just on a selfish one. Look, Perry, if you're going to get back in the car, I want to come and watch you. Yeah.
Thanks, mate. So, you know, but again, something that when I'm trying to describe driving in a race car or on the road, again, for me, there's something that I kind of love to take this opportunity to point out from my opinion. And again, I know we share the same opinion. But in a race car, you're going very, 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 very quickly. Yeah. Bang, bang, bang. Now, whatever the conditions are, the moment that you're behind the race car, you're reacting to it. Yeah. Okay. So that's when you've got a problem. And I have been in those conditions before because I've had such little testing. So then you've just been driving on a lot of bravery, which isn't, but I've been forced to do that, you know, because there's no time. So you're just going, I'm not completely sure what I'm doing, but I'm staying flat through this call and I'm praying, you know, that's it. But generally what you want to be doing, and especially in a road car, is that anybody who's going very quickly and isn't ahead of the car, they're the people who are rough with the car and they think that's quick. Yeah. They're rough with the car because they're playing catch up. The car is quicker than them. Mentally, if you're ahead of the car at whatever speed it is, and hopefully it's not too high speed, but whatever speed it is, if you're ahead of it, you're the one braking, changing down, and that's keeping it smooth, and the car's coming with you. There's a very different psychology.
I love that word, Perry, smooth, because that, whenever I'm teaching skill-based driving, and not mind-based or emotional-based, but skill-based driving, smooth. I want you to judge yourself on smoothness.
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't take, one can actually practice that on the road, and I would advocate just practicing it. Just say to yourself, okay, I'm at fairly low speed. I'm going to play a game. How much can I feel of my braking, my change down and turn in? And once you've started mastering the technique at a fairly low speed, then you can maybe just up the ante a little bit to just go, okay, now I'm, as the police might say, making progress. You know? So just a really nice, smooth, good paced drive, nothing nutcase. But now you're super smooth. And the people in the passenger seat really notice it.
Well, okay. Perry, I've got 2 questions. One is my question I ask everybody. Yeah. So and this is actually the big question that everyone has to answer. It is such a tough question. And the question is, how do you think I rate as an interviewer?
Absolutely. You know, I don't think there's anybody to match you.
That's another point I owe you. And the final closing question is, if you could choose one superhero power, what would it be and why?
Immortality.
Immortality. Go enjoy it. I would have gone for not aging. You know, that's my. I don't, you know, immortality's great, but if I'm just going to carry on getting older, I'm falling apart every day.
Yeah, I may have chosen not aging about 20 years ago, but now it's got to a point where, do I want to stay like this for the rest of my life? It's just, I've just accepted it. You know, it's downhill.
Okay, so Perry, look, thank you for being a great interviewee. Maybe I can do this again some stage again in the future. It would be brilliant, but thank you for your time. So I'm going to say goodbye now. If you want to say goodbye to my audience, and then I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, I'll say goodbye to the audience. Goodbye to you as well, Graham. We'll speak again. But it's always good fun chatting with you, and I've got a lot of respect for how you approach driving, your thoughts, and especially your skill and ability to actually communicate with people and teach them. Whereas I'm maybe I'm not as good as you at that. So it's something, and you save lives doing what you do. So that's great. Well done, mate.
Thank you, Perry. Cheers.